Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of Introduction to Ethics. And as a reminder, what we did last week, the main things we did last week in terms of content, we're looking at this sheet called Philosophical Ethics, almost everything you need to know. And that is at this link. And there's a video that narrates that, which you can check out. This sheet basically presents all the basic concepts that we need. And some of these are very specialized, such as knowing what a logically valid argument is, what exactly that means. Doesn't mean what you think it is to people who aren't familiar with that concept. And then there's the idea of a sound argument. That's also important. And there's also many other concepts that we need to know about. I asked you to watch this video on syllogisms. And syllogisms are a type of argument that we will see very often in this class. We will make syllogisms, and so I need you to watch this video on what syllogisms are, and most importantly, how to make them. Turns out the way a lot of people reason about moral issues, we can really see their arguments in their full structure if we state them as a syllogism. So you need to be familiar with that. Next, moral arguments often have moral premises or moral principles as premises. And a moral principle is like a rule that says if an action is like this, then it's wrong. If an action is like that, then it's permissible. And moral principles are often very much related to moral theories. And I've asked you to take a look at a number of moral theories. One is called consequentialism, and another is Kant's ethics, and another is Rawls' theory of justice, and there's the African ethic of Ubuntu. And here's a little paper where there's some reflections on these theorists, these people who develop these theories. And another topic in applied ethics, which kind of sees how these could be applied to other issues. But what's most important is knowing these. And the basic idea is consequentialism says that what you got to do is produce the best overall consequences. What does that often mean? Well, it often means like produce the best overall happiness. So what's your goal? Or what should your goal be? Producing overall happiness. Does that mean happiness for you? No, not necessarily. Overall happiness. So people sometimes confuse this with a view called egoism, which we'll talk about later. But consequentialism says we must produce the best overall consequences from an objective and fair point of view. Kant's ethics says we must respect everybody. We cannot use anybody as a mere means. We must respect other people's rationality. And yeah, so the idea of rights is often related to Kant's ethics. I'm going to upload an updated version of this essay soon, and it will add in another idea from Kant, which is that when you, for your action to be permissible, you have to be following a rule that you are willing for other people to follow. Next idea is Rawls, and Rawls' theory of justice states that basically, if you wouldn't agree to something being done, if you didn't know who you were, then what's done is wrong. What's done is unjust. So take any injustice of these days. Would anybody agree to those things being done if they didn't know who they were? If they didn't know who they were, they'd have to kind of see things from everybody's point of view, and they would say, I wouldn't agree to be treated like that. And so Rawls thinks that's the key to figuring out what an injustice is. The African ethic of Ubuntu prizes communal relationships and promotes harmony with people. All right, so we want to know about these so we can apply them to other things. I asked you to take a look at this paper on ethics and extra credit, and there was a little writing assignment. So everybody who did it did a good job with that. And then I want you to look at this book, a rule book for students. All right, that's all last week. There were discussion questions. You needed to pick some. You need to know what the guidance is. Your posts need to be substantial. Your replies need to be substantial. So you want to check that out for what's needed. All right, this week we have a bunch of different topics. They're related in various ways, but you can kind of pick and choose a little bit. So the first thing is a chapter from a famous book called The Elements of Moral Philosophy by James Rachels. And the chapter is called What is Morality? And I want you to make sure you read this. It's an introductory chapter that kind of demonstrates the types of things that we'll be up to in this class. So let me open it up. Well, I would need to download it and rotate it. So there, he basically says this. When you're thinking about moral issues, you need to know the facts about the case, and then you need to look at the arguments. And he presents 3 different cases, all about, well, there's an anencephalic baby, which means a baby born without a brain. There was a conjoined twins that if they weren't operated on, they would both die. So there's the question of you can save one, so must you save one? And then there's a girl named Tracy Latimer who had some very serious medical problems, was in horrible pain, and her father killed her to put her out of her misery. And there are arguments given about all these cases. Arguments are reasons that support conclusions, and in each case, the conclusion is often killing this baby or child would be wrong, killing this baby would not be wrong, separating the twins would be wrong, separating the twins would not be wrong and be permissible. And then we want to look at the reasons and lay them out in systematic ways. It occurs to me that I have a page of notes that review these arguments, so I should add these notes here. So I will do that. You know, that's the benefit of a live syllabus. All right. So one issue from this chapter is euthanasia or mercy killing. The Tracy Latimer case raises that. And I have a short paper on euthanasia, and so you can take a look at that. There's 2 versions. There's the very short version. There's the shorter versions. Here, let me write, just add notes. You know, why don't I do that right now? I'm going to do this. Nathan Nobis. Oh, I know where it is. 302 EMP1 notes. Yep. All right, here we go. So there's something on euthanasia, killing people or letting people die to get out of their misery. Since we're on some health-related issues, I thought it'd be good for you to look up some stuff about racial health disparities. So here's an article on organ donation, African Americans and organ donation, and the original case above in the Elements of Moral Philosophy 1, there's one case about organ donation. They want to kill a baby to take her organs to save other children. So we have the topic of organ donation there, and then a racial dimension of organ donation here. A little bit on health disparities. All right, next. For later in the week, I want you to look at something on relativism. Relativism is a moral theory that I think you're going to think isn't a very good theory. It basically says the majority is always right. And so I got this on relativism. And then I'd like you to read some things, watch some things about the topic of genital cutting. This is sometimes called female circumcision. This is sometimes called female genital mutilation. And we'll also think about the male version, which is just male circumcision. And Brian Earp is an expert on this topic. And he has written a lot about how the arguments against female genital cutting, which most people accept, or many people accept, at least in our society, seem to imply that male circumcision is wrong also. So that would mean that if somebody thinks male circumcision is okay, they should think that female genital cutting is okay also. So he argues that people should respond to this by saying that both types of genital cutting are wrong. And he makes his case basically by going back to the moral theories that we discuss above. Consequentialism says if you're doing an action that's harmful, you're probably doing something wrong. Cons ethics says if you're doing something that somebody doesn't consent to, doesn't agree with, you're probably doing something wrong. And babies can't consent to their genitals being cut, of course, and it's harmful or has a serious risk of harm. Okay, so this is related to relativism, though, because people sometimes defend this by saying, well, it's what our culture does, or it's what their culture does. And the thought is that that's a bad argument. Just because our culture does something doesn't mean it's okay. Just because any culture does something doesn't mean it's okay. All right, finally, there's a topic of monogamy and polyamory. Let me just sort of add in Google those topics, especially polyamory, especially ethics and polyamory, to see what you see. So monogamy is being in a relationship with one and only one person. Polyamory is being in a relationship with multiple people and everybody knows about it. I think I might be spelling this word wrong. Let me check. So one thing, it looks like I spelled it wrong. One argument that's given against polyamory is an argument from relativism, which basically says, look, around here, if you're in a relationship, you got to be with one and only one person. Well, if relativism is a bad idea and the majority views can be mistaken, that's not a good argument. So, basically, we've got some health-related or introductory chapter that demonstrates how to find arguments about a number of controversial issues, how to evaluate those arguments. Euthanasia is discussed in that chapter, so we'll get some details on that. Organ donation is discussed in that chapter, so we get that topic as related to African Americans, and then we'll turn to relativism and some related issues with that. So that's the plan for the week. I hope this video is helpful, and see you soon.